If a product gets damaged in transit, who's responsible, the supplier or the customer? The answer often depends on when the risk of damage to that product passes and whether that happens at the same time as ownership. In many contracts, those two moments are different. We're looking at the transfer of risk and ownership in this video. To summarize, when you've got a contract between a supplier and a customer, the point at which ownership transfers can be a different time to when the risk of damage transfers. Let's say you place an order and pay 100% up front. You haven't taken possession of the product yet. We might agree that ownership transfers upon your payment, but the risk of damage only transfers once you receive it. So if the product's damaged during delivery, then it's my responsibility as the supplier to send you a replacement. Should you care about this? It's important in business-to-business deals to know when ownership and risk transfers, since it can impact on your contractual rights and obligations and on the management of your business. The moment of transfer may trigger insurance obligations, requirements to arrange logistics, and can even have tax implications. Let's look at a practical example. New International Supplier Limited enters into a contract to supply spare parts to foreign-based customer limited. The parties agree when ownership and risk to the spare parts will transfer from supplier to customer. As a side note, contract parties often use a standard known as Incoterms to show when they intend for risk to transfer, and I will refer to different Incoterms in this video, which include delivery terms known as ex-works and free carrier. What can go right for the supplier? The parties agree that customer must pay for the product in full when they place their order. Ownership of the product and the risk of damage transfers to customer once supplier delivers it, X works at the location where they made the product. That means, amongst other things, that the customer is responsible for the collection and transportation of the product from there. This is a favorable position for supplier that minimizes their exposure to risk. What could go wrong for the supplier? Let's look at a different scenario. The parties agreed that the customer will only pay for the product once they receive it at their place of work, and that ownership transfers once payment is made. Customer doesn't make payment after receiving the product, which means that supplier continues to own it. This creates a taxable presence for supplier in the foreign country of customer that triggers a permanent establishment and an obligation for supplier to pay taxes there. Let's look at a sample clause and some key considerations, and first to the clause. Ownership of the product will transfer from supplier to customer upon the earlier of payment for the product in full and when risk transfers. There are several reasons why it's preferable for ownership to transfer at a different time to risk. One example was shown on the last slide, but keep in mind that if ownership transfers before payment in full, then it will often be harder to get the product back if payment is not made. Let's continue with the clause. Risk of damage to the product will transfer from supplier to customer upon delivery. Then you insert whichever Incoterm applies, such as X works or free carrier, and then you add the place of delivery, such as to a factory or work site. There are many different options for when risk can transfer. Look up Incoterms on the website of the International Chamber of Commerce for more details. Whichever you choose, make sure you know your corresponding rights and obligations. These can include obligations to have insurance, to arrange transportation, and to manage customs requirements. Choose wisely. Let me recap the most important points from this video. First, the transfer of ownership and risk are two different topics. Ownership can transfer at a different time to responsibility for damage. Make sure to address both in your contract. Second, Incoterms provide detailed, internationally recognized arrangements for when risk transfers. Make sure you understand what obligations you're taking on before you commit. Finally, think carefully about tax implications. If you're a supplier and title transfers after your products enter a foreign country, you might create a taxable presence there. Assess your tax situation and then structure your requirements based on that advice. If you're ready to take your next step to negotiate and use contracts with confidence, then visit us at starlitcontracts.com, where you can access more content, participate in interactive sessions, and be part of our community. I look forward to seeing you there.